I'm Josh McDonald.
And I'm Miranda Materi, and we are Hand Therapy Academy.
We're going to take some time today and show you one of our favorite ways to help with finger tightness and stiffness in the hand. Okay? This is a static progressive finger flexion composite flexion splint. This is a splint that we've kind of perfected for ourselves the way we kind of like it. It's got some slings that will flex the eyepiece at the same time as MCP flexion. This loop and reloop of the monofilament lines down to this velcro advancing portion here gives us the patient an option of doing additional static progressive stretching at home. And we usually recommend a wearing schedule of 3 times a day, working up to 30 minutes at a time. That may start at 10 minutes if that's all they can tolerate, but working up towards 30 minutes. If they can't get 3 times in, 2 times is okay, but 3 is better. 1, still beneficial, but not nearly as much value out of it. Okay, so first thing we have to do is form the base. And we're going to use a piece of 1-inch thick thermoplastic material. This happens to be Aquaplast. I like the drapability of it. We use perforated, it's a little more breathable, a little bit lighter weight while still maintaining the rigidity. If I hold her arm up here, you can see we don't need a huge piece for this. I cut it wider than we need to, but we'll put it at that distal palmar crease, and then it's going to go proximal on the form. This one's longer than it needs to be, but I just cut a square, and we'll make it out of this. I already have a sock cut with a thumb hole in it. We'll put that on before we put the material on her, and then we've got some other pieces. But let's get this in the heat first.
And so for this, we're doing static progressive, and what the literature shows is that static progressive, having that low load prolonged stretch over time, is more effective than, say, having a dynamic. You could certainly make this dynamic by adding rubber bands to the monofilament line, but for the purpose of this video, we are doing static progressive.
And we're also going to focus just on one finger just for the sake of timeliness on the video, but I've had patients with up to as many as all 4 of the digits involved, and then I've also made one where I had the thumb that had an additional piece and that we made a little outrigger, and so you could alternate and do the thumb, or you could do the fingers, and so there's some alternating ability in there too, but we're going to focus just on an index finger just to get things started today. Okay? Okay, so we'll take it out. Get the water off it. And I don't need a ton of working time, so I'm going to take a little bit of the heat out, okay? Just kind of let it cool a minute. And if I can, I'll get a factory edge at that distal palmar crease, and I'll come through here and do a little stretch and tag in the back. If they can help, we didn't tag. If they can help, I'll have them hold their hand in a good functional position. Keep that web space open if they have the ability. If not, I may enlist the help of their other hand or another person. And so we'll go here, and then I'll kind of help and get that down where it needs to be. And we'll go there. I'll hold that wrist in just slight extension. I don't want to be too far forwards in flexion and compress that carpal space at the transverse carpal ligament. I'm going to try to get that down as low as I can so I get good metacarpal flexion, because we're going for a composite stretch here. So I want to make sure we are we're keeping it in a good clearance there on that distal palmar crease and just waiting for it to cool. When it does cool all the way, I'll, if I want, I can draw lines with a yellow pencil. I usually have gotten comfortable enough now that I can just kind of estimate that I'm going to go at the 50% mark here, 50% mark here. I'll cut around that thenar crease here. I know Miranda makes one that is an ulnar based, a lot like just a radius fracture splint that you'll see on one of our how-to making splint videos. And it's just a personal preference, one versus the other. I like that that it's lots and lots of good volar coverage, but open on the back. Some patients prefer the ulnar base. It's just a preference for the therapist and the patient. As I'm waiting for this, I can go ahead and add my stickies. So I've got hook Velcro that I'll add, and I don't want to do a full length piece. I normally do that, but I'm going to have a piece of Velcro going down the center here, and I don't want it going over top of that so it doesn't stick well. So I use just little dots, and I'm going to put these at proximal edges where the proximal strap will go, and I'll put them where the wrist strap will go. Okay? I'll also, when the time comes, add a dry heated strap, or excuse me, a dry heated piece that will function as a tag to hold that down. Again, in our how to make a splint video that you'll see that we heat a little piece of the same color material that's a 1/16 inch and lay that over here so that every time they peel that strap off, it's not peeling that edge up. So we'll add that little tag there. I'm not worried right now. You guys get the idea. We just want to make sure we're making this in a good, timely manner for you. So we're going to put that one there. And if I trim up here and it happens to trim that off, it's not a big deal because I still have enough there to purchase, and that tag just has to catch the very edge of that, so that should be good. And then I'll take this longer piece. This one's going to be too long, but it's 1 inch wide, same kind of Velcro. It's just a long, skinny piece, and I'll put that here. That will run through there. I'm going to leave a little bit of edge open, of that edge, because that's where my lining will go, and that lining we use to make that splint more comfortable there. But I want that to grab onto splint, not onto the Velcro. So I'll leave a little bit of that edge present there. So that's what we've got here. And it looks like we're probably done with our tagging, so I can pull that off. Okay. And I like to just kind of separate that sock from them a little bit and get it loose. It just kind of makes it come off a little easier. So I'm pulling, if I show back here, I'm just kind of pulling that sock and taking up the slack. It separates it from the splinting material a little bit because patients feel like you're trying to take the whole thing off all at once, and it doesn't have to, but I'll open it up nice and big, and we slide it off, and the sock stays, okay? So while it's still a little warm, it's kind of nice to cut it now. I'm just going to trim up and along the edge.
And one thing I was going to say, when Josh was applying the hook Velcro, the material was still warm and cooling. And so since it was still warm and cooling, it actually allows the Velcro to stick a little better, and it helps set the Velcro. So just another technique to make sure your Velcro, your hook Velcro stays in place.
Okay, following up that line. And it's starting to cool a little bit on me, so I'm having a little bit more difficulty cutting through, but you kind of get the idea. I try to round my edges as I go, around my corners rather as I go. And this one, I'm going to go ahead and trim through that web space.
And one thing I'll say, whenever we have new students or new grads coming to our clinics, their hand strength is always very, very weak, but usually by the end they're able to cut this really efficiently. So just because you're not there yet doesn't mean you won't be. After doing this for a couple weeks, you'll build up enough strength and it'll get easy for you.
Okay, so there's my base shape. You can see what that looks like. Okay, I'm going to lay this on here and get a general fit of what we're looking like. And I'm looking for, is the distal palmar crease clear? A lot of patients, when they put it on, will put it on super high, and I want it down, rested on that wrist where it belongs. Am I at the 50% mark on both sides, circumferential? And am I free of any impingement here? Now, this is not a functional splint. I don't expect them to have great opposition here. I just want to make sure that we're not like impinging on anything. But once this is on, you can't do anything with it, okay? It's just going to be on and in place, okay? So let's take a minute here and put some straps on. Know that we'll put an edging on this, and we'll show you what that looks like when all is said and done. We'll put an edging on so that those edges are not jagged on the patient, just for the sake of you seeing what we're doing here. I like to take a 2-inch wide piece, and I cut some width off so it's more like 1.5 inches width. I don't feel like we need the full 2 inches on patients usually, but I think that 1.5 inch width is a more comfortable while still giving lots of coverage. So I'll tag that on. I'll take this other one and trim it down also. If you don't get your scissors sharpened regularly, you definitely should. It makes everything cut way quicker. Okay, and then I have a 1-inch wide strip that I'll curl the edge on. I'll tack that on that proximal edge. I'm going to cut a little bit of a notch for that thumb. Okay, I'm going to go back to the patient. And we're going to wrap that around. And you can see we don't want full circumferential, so my straps didn't have to be super long, just right. We're going to wrap around the back. I missed my angle a little bit, I cut out a little bit there, so I'm going to make sure that matches well. And then I come around the back side. Now, when I'm trying to mobilize, I may even shorten that piece a little bit so I get more purchase of that one. When I'm trying to mobilize these stiff fingers, this is going to want to pull out of the splint. If she's stiff and I start to flex, it's going to want to push out. So I like to have a full 1-inch width back here so it doesn't leverage those the distal metacarpals out of the splint. So I want that's a good purchase there, and we'll talk about making that strap nice and snug. Not turning the fingers purple, but nice and snug there. Okay, that's the base of the splint. Oop, almost forgot. The important part is this 2-inch wide loop Velcro. Okay, this piece is going to go right on there. Now, if I've cut my dots and laid those tags accurately, I can just stick this on and it goes over top of those tags. And this is what that strap is going to connect to. And the better they get, the further down it can go. And so that piece, I just hacked it off, but that's pretty darn close. I don't need it to come up this distal, and I probably don't need it that proximal. but it doesn't hurt to have that extra length. As they get better, you can come further down. Okay, that's the base. Now let's talk about how we're going to make those slings, because that's the tricky part. Okay, so now we have 2 of these, each with 4 holes. Okay, so I'll put them face to face with the loop portion facing each other. I used to dice them and try to glue it on for more grip and purchase on the patient, but it just was this whole long process. The dicing never really stayed well, and if I tried to curl it after, it didn't stay, so I had to set up books, and so it just didn't work to glue that on well. So, but I found that just the fuzzy is sufficient all by itself. So it's hard to see here with these strings, so let's do it with the yarn here. Let's see if this will work. So what we're going to do is, with them face to face, I'm going to start by threading through on the same corner of both at the same time. Okay? I'm going to pull that through about halfway. Let's get that out of the way. I'm going to pass it back through the other corner, okay, and pull it through. That's step 1. I've got that loop passed through. So now I'm going to take what I'll call the left side and pass it through the right side. Okay? So I'm coming back that direction. Okay? Try not to get my yarn caught. Coming through that direction. Can you see how that looped around like that? Okay? Now I'll take the right side and pass it through the left side. Okay? Again, trying not to get my yarn stuck there. Let's do one at a time. So you get the idea. Okay. Come on. There we go. All right. So we're going to pull that one all the way through. So you can see how I have this looping through thing that happens, okay? And so I'll pull that. It doesn't have to go all the way tight just yet. We want to demo it. We've got a little bit of slack there. Now the tricky part when you do the next one is knowing where to start. So if I lay this out with the finished one laying towards me, I'll start the other one from the opposite side. Okay, so that's where I want to start it from. Inevitably, you're going to start it from the wrong side. So it's going to happen, and you'll get it and like, oh shoot, it comes out the wrong direction. But same thing, I'll pass through the same corner with one strand, okay, about halfway, and then I'll pass through the opposite corner, okay. So there's my start. Get those out of the way. So there's my step 1. I'm going to take the right side and pass through the left. And I may have to do one at a time here so it doesn't get caught up on the fuzzies again. Okay. Pull that through. And then I'll take the left side and pass through the right side. Okay. So now I have both coming through the same direction. Okay? And the idea is it doesn't flow well when it's the yarn, but you get the idea. If they spread the finger, it draws the yarn up, and when I pull the yarn down, it brings it together. Okay? It closes it. So we're going to set that there for a moment so you can see what that looks like, and then we'll bring this over. So what I'll do from here is lay this out, and there's a sequence to this. The yarn will then pass through this little tiny connector. Okay? This little piece is a very small gauge hole that you can find from the therapy providers, Performance Health and North Coast, those kind of places. You can also find in most places that sell craft supplies, Michaels, or any fishing supplies. I'll pass all 4 strands of that fishing line through the connector. Okay? Then I'll pass it through this piece of non-adhesive back hook Velcro. I folded it in half and then punched a hole in it. That way when the string is pulling, I've got 2 layers that it would have to tear through versus just one if I just did a single hole. Gives a little bit more strength, and they'll be pulling on it with some force if they're really applying it with some good static load, okay? So fold it in half. It'll pass through the connector. It'll pass through the Velcro. It'll loop back and go through the connector a second time, okay? So it'll be in that orientation. I'm going to wait to compress that clip, that little connector, until it's on the patient. So I have this one that I have ready for a patient I made in some downtime, and I've got it ready to go, but I just have it loose, so it's passed through, but it's not crimped yet, because I don't know how long or short to make it. The less flexion the patient has available, the longer that fish line needs to be. And in relation to how long that the sticky back loop Velcro is, there's some variables there. So I wait to compress that until I actually put it on the patient. I size it, and then I crimp it. But that's the general layout. We've got it looped through the connector, through the Velcro, back through the connector, wait to compress it. So now let's see what it looks like putting it on a patient. Okay, so now we're going to work on putting that sling on the patient. So like we talked about, it's loose, it's not been crimped down yet. I want lots of slack there so I don't accidentally pull that monofilament through the line connector. It's just a pain to have to feed it all back through again. So let's pretend it's her index finger that's a little stiff. We're going to come down to the table level here, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and try to loop it on her finger. And I've got to keep some tension on this, so I'm going to take it around that finger, okay? And I'm going to pull tight until I get to her point of tension. Now she's got no limits in range of motion, so she can pull nice and tight and it's going to bottom out. But on a stiff finger, it's going to be a little less likely to happen, okay? Then I'll collect all those loose strands, pull them out of the way, and I'm going to see where I want to be. I want to give us some potential to get better, right? If I put it way down here at the beginning, they've got no room to grow. So I'm going to take it nice and high. Where they are, I'm going to put a little tension on, and I'm going to give them a little bit of a pull and say, oh, okay, that's tight, and I'll back off. I want them to be what I call like a 3 or 4 on the scale of 0 to 10 of tension and stretch. We're looking for like a 3. And they don't always understand exactly what they mean. So I say 3 to 4. They're probably more likely a 3, but in that range for tension. I don't want to be a 10. They can't handle that for 30 minutes. So we're going to a little bit of tension here. I'll find that spot. I back off, and then I'm going to use some pliers. And those needle nose or flathead, whatever you're going to use, I'm going to squeeze and compress all the way along there. I like using needle nose because it gives me lots of direct pressure. I just have to do it 2 or 3 times. Okay? Then I'll take, you can either use scissors or a little wire snip portion of the pliers does a real good job of snipping that off while it's already in my hand. I'm going to go back, make sure it's on nice and snug. We pull it down, and we attach. Okay? Remember, like we talked about in the beginning, the wearing schedule is 3 times a day for 30 minutes a session. And for some patients, they just can't get that in. I say 2 is better. 1, you may not be getting much benefit out of it, but if you're not doing it at least every day, you're not going to get the benefit out of it. This is like an adjunct to stretching at the home setting.
And if they have a lot of pain issues, you may start off by saying, I want you to just do it 10 minutes and then build up from there.
Yeah, yeah. So this is our static progressive flexion splint. It's a kind of a unique way to wrap those finger slings that gets IP flexion as well as MP flexion as that comes down as well. But it's a low-tech splint. It's low profile, but it's not a functional splint. I don't expect them to be able to do anything else in this splint. This is a stretching splint. They're not going to be able to do much but check their phone or watch Netflix or something. But that's what it looks like. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to us on our Instagram, or you can find our emails at www.handtherapyacademy.com.